common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Joining us now, we have Professor Alan Dershowitz. Professor Dershowitz, let's start, first of all, let's start where we stopped right there on Trump, the hearing today. Yeah. Can you believe this? By the way, I was looking, they say the judgment, this is this inflated judgment that the judge was talking about, $450 million. Yeah. Guess what? The interest every day is $115,000 a day on interest they're charging him. I mean, this is crazy.
Well, I filed an amicus brief in the case along with a professor from Yale Law School on the Eighth Amendment. We filed a brief not taking, not representing a particular person, but saying as law professors interested in the Constitution, we think the Eighth Amendment applies here. The Eighth Amendment talks about excessive fines, and what could be more excessive than finding somebody that much money when there was not even an allegation that anybody was hurt and there were no complaining witnesses. So, I have a horse in this race via an amicus brief. So I'm hoping the court will look hard on this and say this amount of money is way out of whack under the Constitution's Eighth Amendment. As far as the mayor is concerned, he did a very smart thing. He picked a very good lawyer, former student of mine.
He is, Alex Spiro.
Yeah, Alex is a very good lawyer. I've had dealings with him over the years. He comes from a very, very good law firm, and I have a hunch as to the strategy in the case. And for me, the strategy was set out at the first press conference. Did you notice who was at the first press conference? Almost everybody I saw on television was African American.
Yes. Are you speaking about who was behind the mayor when he spoke?
Yes. Behind the mayor, yeah. And I think he's going for a hung jury based on race. I think he's going to make the argument in the court of public opinion, even though the prosecutor is black as well. He's going to make a political argument. He's going to be very subtle about the racial issue, but he's going to hope that, 2 or 3 or 4 members of the jury will be racially sympathetic to the first black mayor. That's a common tactic that's used. Obviously, the O.J. Simpson case, that was in the minds of the defense lawyers. I was one of them, and the defendant. And although in that case, of course, there was an acquittal with white jurors joining black jurors acquitting, in this case, the likelihood of a hung jury seems pretty high because the evidence, there's evidence of actions. Now, some of the allegations that I've seen, at least on television, seem absurd. They upgraded his room. They upgraded him on the airlines. I get upgraded.
Why would they even say that? I mean, that's nonsense.
I mean, when they see somebody who they know who's well-known, and I'm not well-known, but people know me, I get, Dershowitz, we'll give you an upgrade. And so, they're going to have to go beyond that. Then they're going to have to prove, specific payments of money in return for favors that would not have otherwise been done. And remember, politicians do favors all the time. They do it in anticipation of support. They do it for all kinds of reasons. So this is not going to be the easiest case to prove. And with a good lawyer on the other side and with a racially diverse jury, this is not a slam dunk for a conviction.
Yeah, I was surprised, by the way, how thin it was. Ed Cox.
The Supreme Court's been very consistent on this. You need a quo for the quid pro quo, right? And what's the quo? I read the indictment. It was hard to see.
Well, the argument that they're making is that the Turkish consulate or whatever got facilitated and pushed through more quickly when the fire people weren't sure, and maybe that was a result of how nicely they treated him in Turkey. Look, in a jury in New York, the fact that he got favors from Turkey, Erdogan, is not going to help him either. Turkey is not today the most popular country in the world, certainly not among any Jews on the jury.
The Greeks are not too happy with him either. The Greeks are not up on that list either.
Yeah. I mean, he belongs to a club. He's an anti-Semite, anti-Greek, anti a lot of good things. So the Turkey connection is not going to help. But having a good lawyer on board, a serious lawyer with a big law firm behind him, a very good law firm behind him, is going to be very helpful. And I think the racial composition of the jury will be.
The name of the lawyer is Alex Spiro. Do you know him?
I know him well. He's a former student of mine. I've worked with him over the years.
I had dinner with him one night, and he seemed like a smart guy. Governor Patterson, you have a question?
Alan, what do you think about the fundraising out of the country, that issue for them to deal with?
You know, if it's black and white, I mean, if there are clear rules about that. The other question is, if it's just a violation of New York law, the federal court has to have jurisdiction. Now, they have jurisdiction over interstate fraud and all of that. But if it's just accepting contributions from a corporation or accepting contributions from a foreign source, there may be a jurisdictional issue there, too. Look, I haven't looked at the case.
So, Alan, it's about nominees. In other words, the way the scam allegedly worked is that money from Turkey moved into the States. There was some business guy who would then say it was a corporate contribution or contribution from his attorneys, but it was really foreign money. That's the allegation, which is a federal law violation.
And they're going to be able to prove it only because, as you know, the way federal prosecutors work is you go for the low-hanging fruit first, you indict them or threaten to indict them, and you get them then to testify against the boss. And so there's probably going to be a lot of guys rushing to the courthouse to try to get the deal first and offering to testify. Now, I've said this for many years. Prosecutors sometimes, not good prosecutors, but sometimes not only get cooperating witnesses to sing, they sometimes get them to compose, and that's when the worry comes in. When the witness decides to
embellish,
plant his testimony in a way that appears favorable to the prosecution to get a deal, because there are going to be cooperating witnesses in this case. That I guarantee.
And Professor Dershowitz, we just have like a minute left, but Judge Weinberg, ask him about the UNRWA. This is really
Alan,
interesting.
Do you know about the U.S. Department of Justice going into federal court and making an argument that the UNRWA employees during the attack of October 7th by Hamas and worked with them in that attack, that somehow they're immune under...
No, it's ridiculous.
I've never heard of anything more ridiculous in my life.
Right. And it's dangerous. I spoke at the UN yesterday. I spoke with Colonel Kemp, with other great military leaders about Israel's proper conduct, both in the war in Gaza and Hezbollah. And, going to that building, I had to hold my nose. When you pass somebody from UNRWA, UNRWA is a Hamas front, and they support Hamas. And it's not surprising to me, of course, that people from UNRWA were participating in the rapes and the murders. And the idea that the United States gives immunity to them under a treaty, no. And I think that will be reversed.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Dershowitz. Really great to have you here. Thank you so much.